Vaccine ingredients. Wow. It's a topic that has sparked so much debates and honestly a lot of fear for decades now. Today, we're going to trace the history of where these concerns came from, follow the science, and really understand what the evidence actually says.
You know, it's a question that just keeps popping up again and again. Even with this huge scientific consensus, worries about certain ingredients just seem to stick around. So, where did all these questions even start, and how did the focus of what people were worried about change over the years? Let's dive in.
All right, so here's the game plan for today. We're going to start with the origins of this whole ingredient question. Then we'll dive into the story of a preservative called thimerosal. We'll see how that kind of morphed into a focus on aluminum, and then we'll decode what aluminum is even doing in there as something called an adjuvant. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by looking at the scientific consensus.
Okay, let's kick things off with part one. To really get a handle on the debate around vaccine ingredients, we have to go back to the beginning. And this isn't just a science lesson, you know? It's really about history and how public perception can totally shape the conversation around science.
So this is a really key point. These concerns didn't just pop up out of thin air. They have a very specific starting point. It all really started with a study from 1998, one that's now been completely retracted, that tried to link the MMR vaccine to autism. From there, it just blew up into this huge public thing, and the concerns kept evolving as the science moved forward.
And that story? Well, it really kicks into high gear with our first case file, thimerosal. If you've ever heard a controversy about a vaccine ingredient, chances are it all started right here. So what is this stuff anyway? Well, thimerosal is a preservative, and it contains something called ethyl mercury. Its job was actually pretty simple and super important. It was there to stop dangerous bacteria or fungi from growing in vaccine vials that were designed to be used for more than one person. Okay, so let's walk through how this all went down. It all ignited in 1998 with that study that just sent shockwaves of fear through the public. Now, even though it was later found to be fraudulent and was retracted, the fear it created was very real. So in 1999, public health agencies made a big decision. They recommended removing thimerosal from most childhood vaccines, just as a precaution. By the early 2000s, it was basically gone. And since then, well, study after study after study, we're talking huge, large-scale studies, have all come to the same conclusion. Absolutely no link between thimerosal and autism. Period. And this is the part you really got to understand. The decision to take thimerosal out was a classic example of what's called the precautionary principle. It wasn't an admission of guilt, right? The point wasn't to fix a problem that had been proven. The goal was really to maintain public confidence in the whole vaccination program, even when the actual evidence of harm just wasn't there.
But of course, the story doesn't just end there. This is where things get interesting. It's kind of like a game of whack-a-mole. Once the science on thimerosal was settled, the fear didn't just go away. Nope, it just found a new place to land.
And this is the slippery slope we're talking about today. The concern over one ingredient, once it was dealt with, just slid right over to another one. And all of a sudden, the new focus of all that anxiety was aluminum.
Which brings us to the big question. What's the deal with aluminum in vaccines? If it's not a preservative like thimerosal was, then what is it even doing in there? And why have we been using it for decades?
All right, time to put on our science hats for a minute. To get why aluminum is in some vaccines, you first need to understand a really important concept in immunology, the adjuvant. Okay, so an adjuvant is basically like a personal trainer for your immune system. Its job isn't to be the vaccine itself. Instead, it's there to rev up your body's immune system so it reacts way more strongly to the vaccine. The result? Better, tougher, and longer-lasting immunity.
So how does it actually work? Well, imagine the aluminum adjuvant sets off a little alarm bell right where you got the shot. It's like shouting, "Hey, immune cells, get over here, something's happening." This brings all the right cells to the scene, helps them recognize the important part of the vaccine, and basically tells them, hey, pay attention to this. You need to remember it. And that's how you build a powerful, lasting immune memory.
Okay, so that's what it does. But the big question is always about the amount, right? And this is where context is literally everything. The amount of aluminum in vaccines is tiny, it's super regulated, and it has a long safety record. In fact, it's not even close. Babies get way, way more aluminum just from what they eat every single day.
And wow, this chart really drives the point home. In their first 6 months, a baby might get about 4 milligrams of aluminum from all their vaccines combined. Okay, but from breast milk alone, they'll get around 7 milligrams, and if they're on infant formula, that number jumps to about 38 milligrams. I mean, look at that. The amount from their food just completely dwarfs what they get from vaccines.
And here's the other thing. Our bodies are amazing at dealing with it. Over 99% of the aluminum that comes into our system, doesn't matter if it's from food or a vaccine, gets cleared out by our kidneys super fast. It doesn't stick around.
Okay, so we followed the trail from thimerosal to aluminum, we've looked at the science, now it's time to bring it all home. What's the final verdict here?
When you look at the science, the consensus is, well, it's about as clear as it gets. First off, these aluminum adjuvants, they're not new. We've been using them safely for over 70 years. The amount in vaccines is incredibly small, well below any established safety limits. Decades and decades of research have shown they're safe and effective, and pretty much every major health body on the planet, the FDA, the CDC, the World Health Organization, they all agree on their safety. And honestly, this quote from the scientific community really just says it all. The body of evidence isn't just there, it's robust. After decades of use and billions of doses, there is just no scientific evidence showing that they cause harm in people.
And that really gets to the heart of the matter. This whole slippery slope of vaccine ingredients, it isn't really a story about a scientific debate. That debate isn't happening in the labs. It's happening out in the world, fueled by this disconnect between what the overwhelming amount of science says and what some people continue to fear.
And so that leaves us with this one big lingering question, doesn't it? If the science is so incredibly clear on this, why is the fear so persistent? It's a question that goes beyond just chemistry. It's about communication, it's about trust, and it's about how we all process information and risk in today's world. It's a really tough question, and definitely something to think about.
Thanks for watching. Visit our website www.christthelivingtruth.com to learn more.